Mediabyte Podcast Network.
Jason, Mother is talking to you.
I want to play a game.
Don't fall asleep.
Just been informed that zombies have entered the building.
You opened it. We came.
The unburied dead are coming back to life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slash It podcast. So, today we are going to be talking about one of my personal favorite Final Destination films. At least, honestly, this was my favorite Final Destination film besides the first one, before Bloodlines came out, because Bloodlines was the first one that I ever actually got to watch in theaters, and so Bloodlines holds a special place in my heart. And also, we'll talk about that more as, when we get to that episode. But I want to let you guys know where I have been. It's been a little bit since I have done one of these episodes. So, basically, I'm getting married. I'm going to get married on Halloween of this year, so 10/31/25. And I've been planning out that wedding for a while. If you guys have not been paying attention, like you don't watch or listen to anything else that I do on the podcast network here, I have been posting Exploring Cinema every week. Exploring Cinema is another podcast that I do where it's a little bit easier. This, I actually have put a lot more writing into. There's a lot of writing that goes into this. There's like 4,000 word scripts to get all the information that I want to tell you, kind of stuff like that. So it's a little bit more written out, a little bit more like researched than Exploring Cinema is, or Exploring Cinema is me and my, at this point, fiance. And we go through and kind of just talk about different movies and stuff. And very simply, we just watch the movie, we turn on the podcast, and we talk about it. It's much different than this. It's much more of a conversation. It's not as me just kind of talking and, speaking to you. But besides that, yeah, so basically, it's just taking me a bit because I'm trying to figure out how to work all this stuff out and get all of it out for you guys. But I've also been making videos on the YouTube channel, so if you feel like you're missing out, check out Mediabyte on YouTube. It's the blue circle with the cookie in the center of it with the Mediabyte. That's usually how you can find it. And you can find it at Mediabyte, I think, on YouTube, and that's good for me. If you would like to do that, I would appreciate it. We're at 440 subscribers at the time of recording this, which is incredible. It's the highest grossing. I'm definitely talking about movies now, but the highest YouTube channel I've ever had. So I really do deeply appreciate it. But let's get back into what we are talking about today. Today is used to be my favorite Final Destination sequel, Final Destination 5. So Final Destination 5 is the 5th film in the franchise, and it is not the Final Destination 2. It's Final Destination 5. If you don't know what that is joking about, there's the Final Destination is Final Destination 4, which has always made me laugh that Final Destination 4 was called The Final Destination, as if it was the end, and then they just made Final Destination 5, and then they moved on, which I don't really know why they called it The Final Destination, because it's probably the worst Final Destination, at least in my book. I like all the other ones except for the 4th one. I don't know why, I just never really got into it, but yeah, I think it's at the end, in my opinion. So this film released on August 12th of 2011 when I was 8 years old. I was 8 years old when this movie came out, and with a budget of $40 million, it managed to nab a box office of $157.9 million, which, not including marketing costs, is a profit of $117.9 million. Usually, for marketing costs, you usually double the budget of the film, so it'd be about $80 million. So then they made a budget of roughly $80 million, somewhere in there, roughly, kind of. Somewhere around there, 40-50 million is probably what they 80 90 million is probably roughly what they spent. Who knows like what the profit was, but who knows how much the actual budgeting cost, because usually budgeting just depends on what they think about the movie beforehand. If they don't think it's going to do well, they're not going to promote it as much to save as much money in profit as it can. But this movie probably did a full 40 million, and so their budget would have been around 80. That's what their profit would have been. So from this point on, spoilers are completely on the table. So be careful if you're trying not to have this movie spoiled for you. Just know, like, I think you should watch it before you watch this. So click off this podcast if you choose. No hard feelings. And watch the movie and then come back. I would really appreciate that. But you don't have to do that either. But I would love for you to check out the rest of this podcast. But I want you to watch this movie as spoiler free as possible. So if you've seen the movie, stay here. We're gonna talk all about it. If you have not, please, be careful what you're looking at and what you're listening to. But if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast apps, maybe just throw me down your playlist a little bit and then go watch the movie tomorrow or whatever, and then come back. So spoilers. And now here are the spoilers. This film is a prequel to the first Final Destination film. That is never once talked about in the entire film. It's just set before the first Final Destination, and clearly makes that obvious by the way the film ends, which we'll talk about later. I think it's awesome how they managed to tie both the beginning and the end of this section of the franchise almost together in kind of a really, really interesting and cool way. Because I genuinely feel like after this point, the franchise kind of doesn't feel beholden to the film. Almost like you had to go before the film in chronological order in order to actually get over to the Devon Sawa film. Like, the connection of the franchise is almost no matter beholden to which. I think the franchise could have been incredible had it actually been able to get off the same film, different title kick that it kind of found itself in for a little bit. But I do like the way that it kind of surrounded itself and managed to kind of become its own thing, which I think is really, really special and important to this franchise. Is after this point, especially with Final Destination Bloodlines, they really did make itself work almost. It really does work in Final Destination. I just think everything about this movie works. I don't know if all of it works, but a lot of it does. I think it's also one of the funniest, and one of the most interesting out of all the films, just because of the way the film ends. I think it just makes this movie much more interesting than it's been. Okay, so that's kind of just a little bit of a tangent, but let's get into the best cast probably that this franchise has had. At least Final Destination Bloodlines is right up there. So in terms of cast, at least. So let's get into the cast at least up to this point. So Nicholas D'Agosto as Sam Lawton. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I'm going to mispronounce a lot of names here. But Nicholas's first credit was Election in 1999, which I believe has. Let me actually look that up really quick. I believe Election has Matthew Broderick in it. Am I correct about that? Yes, it is. It is Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon. I don't know how I knew that. I've never seen this film before, but a lot of people like this movie a lot. I've never seen it, but I know people talk about it a lot and they like it a lot. But he is in that movie probably as a kid or a teenager. And he was also in Rocket Science in 2007, which is a movie I've never seen. He was also in a few episodes of different TV shows like ER, House, and The Office. Probably his most recognizable role is Harvey Dent in Gotham for quite a few episodes. His role in this movie is practically the main character, and I honestly think he does a great job in the movie by simply being a great leading man throughout the movie and kind of nailing the ending of the movie, honestly, which is really hard to do because it entirely falls on him and his way of acting, which this movie would not be what it was without his perfect way of acting and kind of nailing the sort of twist ending, kind of slowly revealing what's going on through just your facial reactions and kind of unveiling it with the audience as the director kind of does. There was a perfect matching of the director and the actor here that I think really, really worked, especially with the end, which again, we'll talk about the ending when we get there, I'm sorry, but this movie entirely hinges on its ending, at least in my book. And now we are going to move on to Emma Bell as Molly Harper. She's in Frozen, not the animated one, a different one. It's a horror movie where they're stuck up on I think it's the one where they're stuck up on a ski lift, I believe. I might be wrong about that, but I think that's what it is. She's in a few episodes of Law and Order, The Walking Dead, Supernatural, and Arrow. So you know the kind of person and kind of actor that you can imagine in your head. She kind of plays the right-hand woman for most of the Final Destination films, like how every film has a man and a woman as the main lead, which I've always found kind of goofy, to be completely honest. Like they were afraid to make one person the lead, so they didn't. Which I'm very, very glad that they made Final Destination have kind of one main character, really, but it was also a woman, which I think was really important to this movie, because all the women in these movies have been kind of off to the side, really. There's not, I would guess Clear Rivers, kind of was like a really important character in the second one, but I've always felt like most of the main characters in this movie are like kind of thrown off to the side a little bit. Let me think. Is Final Destination 2 have a main woman as the main character, or is it still just? No, I guess it does kind of have. No, it does sort of, but it's just so not like. So no, it's the pairing. There's the pairing of the two people. Again, it's the pairing of the two people that I've always found kind of weird. But they absolutely made Final Destination Bloodlines definitely made a woman the main character, which I've always really appreciated a lot. I really appreciated that in that movie, because I thought it was a very, very good idea to finally have a woman be the main character really in that movie. So, because I think that movie does a great job with a lot of things that it's talking about and it's referencing, and I think the whole movie works. And not only because she's a woman, but also the movie just works. But I also think that the movie Final Destination franchise needed a movie finally where a woman was the main character. It took 7 movies to get there, really. Well, I guess that's not true. I guess they had Final Destination 3. The main woman was kind of the main character. Yeah, no, because I'm thinking, like, Final Destination 3, I guess, does have the woman as the main lead, but I also feel like it is still kind of jumps into that whole kind of co-lead thing, where that other guy that's with her all the time is also kind of like the main character a little bit. Because Devon Sawa was, like, undeniably the main character in the first one. And I think the main woman in Final Destination Bloodlines is absolutely 100% the main character in that movie. And I just don't think there's any of the other Final Destination Bloodlines do that unless it's a pairing, which I've always found kind of weird. But now we're going to move on to Miles Fisher as Peter Friedkin. Friedkin, maybe. Friedkin is probably how I would pronounce it. He is best known for this movie and Superhero Movie, the, like, weird parody of movies that came out spin-off of the Scary Movie franchise. He's in a few episodes of Mad Men, Psych, and Gossip Girl. He sort of plays the human antagonist in the movie that most movies of these have. I think that alone is enough to warrant his existence in the film. Because when I think of human villains in the Final Destination franchise, this is kind of who I think of. He is generally the good, kind of unlikable in the movie, because I think there is something, like, maybe punchable is the right word. He's, in my opinion, probably the best human villain that the Final Destination franchise has. A great job all around, and I wish he was in more stuff, because he does a great job, and I think he'd be an absolutely incredible leading man in any movie, really. And I would love to see a movie that he's in he's the leading man in. It's kind of he just plays that main human villain that Final Destination 3, Final Destination 4, I think, has, and Final Destination 2 kind of has. Ellen Rowe as Candace Hooper. The most popular thing she's in is probably The Pit, which apparently is a really, really good, although I have not seen much about the show, but I've heard it's really good. Rowe probably has the most well-known kill in all of the franchise, especially this late into the franchise. An absolutely gnarly kill, but you'll get that later. Her role in this film is very limited and not very in-depth, which is not really her fault. It's just kind of the way the character is written. But she does a good job at it. Most people who do side characters in these movies do a great job at it. It's not really anybody's specific fault. It's just kind of the way these movies sort of go. I wish it wasn't like that. I wish all the characters would be better written, which I think, honestly, that is the number one reason why Final Destination Bloodlines works the way it does, is because so much of that movie is focused on the family so much that you don't have the issue like this with that character where Like, you're kind of worried more about what's going on with them. Like, you're much more focused on the family aspect of things, and you just kind of know what's going on, which I think really does affect the way that a lot of these movies work, really, I guess, if that makes sense. But I think there's so much of Final Destination Bloodlines that just really does a great job, and I honestly am just excited for it. But you know something I realized I didn't say? Happy Halloween season, guys. Thank you for sticking around. It is now 10/2/2025 at the time of recording this. Probably sometime next week when you're hearing it. I love Halloween season. It's me and my fiance both love Halloween, and that's why we're getting married on Halloween. But I've always loved it. It's been my favorite Halloween, like, holiday, I guess is what I mean. And I just love it a lot. So I'm going to try to get these out more for you, especially during this month. But also I'm going to try to get them out for you pretty regularly, at least once a month, because it does take me a lot longer to write these than every other thing. But we'll see. 2 videos on the podcast, on the YouTube channel still. But I'm going to try to get these episodes out for you guys at least once a month. Hopefully, I can get them out like once every 2 weeks is my goal, really, to nail it down to there. But Exploring Cinema is there for you guys if you want it. But I just always loved doing these. So let's just keep going on here. So I might mispronounce this. My bad if I do. It's Jacqueline MacInnes Wood. I might be mispronouncing the middle name there. As Olivia Castle. She is most known for, and I am not even joking with this number, 2,588 episodes of the soap opera The Bold and the Beautiful, which, when I saw that number, my jaw dropped. She had a somewhat substantial role in the film, at least up to a certain point. Her death is, again, one of the most iconic deaths in the entire franchise. I mean, I think this entire film is filled with the most iconic deaths in the franchise, which is a franchise of iconic deaths. It's very important to the rest of the films. I think that stands out for what I think about this movie. But 2,588 episodes of a single TV show is one of the most crazy numbers I've ever seen in my entire lifetime. What even is that? What does 2,588 episodes look like? Like, that is one of the most wild numbers I have seen in a very, very long time. And I mean, heck yeah, get your bag, girl. That's crazy. 2,000. I couldn't imagine doing anything for 2,588 episodes, regardless of how much I like doing it. That's crazy. Let's just move on to the next character, PJ Byrne as Isaac Palmer. This is the name of someone that you have probably seen the face of before, but don't know his name. He is in Wolf of Wall Street, A Complete Unknown, Horrible Bosses, and a lot more. His role again in this film is almost entirely just kind of a comedic role. I think he does a good job at what his character is set up for, but it's mostly just to fit into that comedic role that a lot of these movies have. I think he does a pretty good job. I think if you just know who this guy's face is, you'll know what I mean. Yeah. So let's just kind of move on. That's kind of his character, really. Arlene Escarpata as Nathan Sears. In the horror world, you'll know this guy as half the Cheech and Chong ripoff from the Friday the 13th ripoff, which is honestly not a bad movie, but I think we will get to what we... In the horror world, you will know this guy as half of the Cheech and Chong ripoff from the Friday the 13th remake, which is honestly not a bad movie, but I think we'll get to that when we get there. I really do like that movie, at least I think I like it. It's been a while. It's been a bit since I have seen it, but he is a really good character in that movie. Probably my favorite character out of the entire film. He also fits a kind of comedic role in this film, which again, I think fitting this movie with a bunch of people who are comedians is actually really important. At least can be funny, maybe comedians is overstating it a little bit. I think it's really important to keep the movie funny because I think it really works out for the best in this film. Not taking yourself so deadly serious works out very, very well. He does a great job. And you'll see what I mean by comedians when we look at the next character. David Koechner as Dennis Latman. He's Todd Packer from The Office. If any of you have seen The Office, that's who he is from. He's also in a lot of other things, but that is by far the thing that I know him from the most, and his most well-known role, I would assume, is Todd Packer in The Office. He plays the annoying boss of the branch that the main characters work around, and he's also kind of a comedic role. In Final Destination 5, he plays the annoying boss of the branch that the main characters work around. He's also kind of a comedic role, again, which I think I've said for almost every character in this film, but it is true, he does play a very comedic role, which I think, again, is why this movie works as well as it does. So, I think I've talked about him, I've touched on him a little bit throughout these movies, but I want to talk about him again. Tony Todd as William Bloodworth. He's the Agent of Death. He's the only person throughout the franchise that transcends every film in the franchise. He's in almost every movie, and actually understands what is going on throughout every film right from the get-go. So, of course, the characters have to go see him, and which I think is partially what makes his cameos so awesome, because they aren't just cameos for no reason. They truly hold a kind of pivotal moment in the films, and I'll be sad that, unfortunately, he did pass away, and he will not be in the next Final Destination film. But he did manage to write out his own dialogue and his own monologue for Final Destination 7. And he really was talking straight to the audience about his death and what he wishes for all of us, which I think is honestly one of the most heart-touching moments in a lot of horror franchises. It is making me get goosebumps a little bit, but I really liked the movie a lot, and I think that Tony Todd has always done an incredible job in these movies, and honestly, he's the reason why these movies work. So if you don't know, part of what happened with a lot of low-budget horror movies is Tony Todd would attach his name somewhere just so that way the film would get producers on board because Tony Todd's name was there. And so that way low-budget horror movies could actually get producers and get made. He did that with a bunch of films. I don't know if Candyman was one of them, but I know for a fact this was definitely one of them. And that's how the movie got made, which I think is really, really cool. And it's always just really meant a lot that he definitely cared about low-budget horror movies. And I just think it's really cool. So, first time that I saw Final Destination 5, I'm pretty sure I saw it in order of release, so I would have seen this film 5th in the order, and I honestly didn't have any clue what the ending was. I didn't want to know what the ending was. I just kind of watched it, so that way, I wouldn't, really no intentions behind it. I just knew it was the 5th in the franchise. I was like, okay, well, I don't really know where this could go, but okay. But I think this was generally one of the more fun films in the entire franchise because everything is recontextualized to you in like a very Saw-esque way after the ending of the film. I saw this probably just at the end of the binge of filming of watch all these films. Just put it on the last, and it was an incredible ending to the entire franchise, at least up to that point. I really loved the wraparound way the film kind of ends, ties everything together. The first time I saw this movie, I was baffled by the ending, and I could not believe my eyes. And I still don't sometimes when I watch this, especially when I start thinking about how everyone's not carrying a cell phone, like there really isn't any new technologies. Everything just works so well, and they really do trick you. Like, if you pay attention, there are hints that things are not from 2011, things are from 1998 or 1997, but you don't really notice it very well, which I think definitely pays tribute to the way that the directors and writers really thought about everything and thought about the ending enough to make that so apparent that there is no technology. Let's move on to the plot of the film. So, office worker Sam Lawton, our main character, is heading to a company retreat with his colleagues. While crossing the North Bay Bridge, he has a premonition of the bridge collapsing due to high winds, killing everyone except for his ex-girlfriend, Molly Harper. He panics, and he sees the premonition like everyone else does in these movies. He convinces Molly, his friend, and his boss, Peter Friedkin, Peter's girlfriend, Candace Hooper, his manager, Dennis Latman, factory manager, Nathan Sears, and 2 colleagues, Olivia Castle and Isaac Palmer, to get off the bridge. Then the bridge collapses. So then the FBI, of course, is like, Sam, what'd you do? Why'd you do that, Sam? Sam is cleared when Block's colleague determines the collapse was not man-made. To survive, they must kill everyone to steal their remaining lifespan, which is... To survive, they must kill someone to steal their remaining lifespan, which I don't understand. So Sam and Molly fail to save Olivia, who falls through a window. Sam realizes that the survivors are dying in the order they would have died in the bridge collapse, like everyone does, and that Nathan is next. So during a workplace argument, Nathan does some things. When the other survivors hear this, they deduce that Nathan must have stolen Roy's lifespan. Suddenly, a machine launches a wrench into Dennis's face, killing him. So then, 2 weeks later, Sam and Molly, blah blah blah, board a plane, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So, let's look at some of the kills from the film. Candace Hooper fell off a support beam while doing gymnastics, snapping her spinal cord, which is one of the most graphic moments in any of these movies. Like, you really have no idea where this kill is about to go, what's about to happen in this kill, but it happens, and you go, holy freaking shit, what just happened? This kill is one of them. There's kind of a few, like, fake outs about this kill, which you'll know what I mean when we get there. Like not when we get there, but like fans are around. You're like, how is all this stuff going to affect into this death? And it does. There's like a nail. She steps on a nail, and she like, she falls on a nail, and then there's like powder that flies in her face, a fan, and it all blows her away, and then she does the support, like the jump wrong, and then dies, and it's just a crazy moment. It all happens in like 20 seconds or something. It's just crazy. So Isaac Palmer was crushed by a falling Buddha statue in this movie after being a kind of a creepy guy. And he gets like, he's doing acupuncture and he falls and the acupuncture impales on him, and it's also just terrible. And I can't with that kill a lot because the little pokes freak me out really bad, and that is one of the most horrifying moments in any of these Final Destination movies, in my opinion. Olivia Castle fell onto a car after falling through a window. Roy Carson actually pushed into a metal hook, causing it to go under his chin and through the top of his head. That was an accident. That's when Nathan grabs, like steals his lifespan or whatever, and kind of like moves ahead in the list or like behind in the list as these things happen. Dennis Latman was killed when a wrench flew into his eye. Jim Block, the agent, was shot 3 times in the back by Peter Friedkin. Peter Friedkin was impaled through the back by Sam Lawton with a meat skewer. And then the movie kind of ends. So the ending of the film is by far before we get into the ending, actually, the kills in this movie are some of the best kills in the entire franchise. And I think part of it is because some of the kills are actually like the main character's faults. Not like Sam's, but like Peter Friedkin's, the bad guy in the movie. A lot of the kills were his fault in some way or the other. I just think so much of the movie works because there is such a human element to this movie. And I think that's why Bloodlines works as well, which we'll talk about later in the next episode. But I just think there's something really special about this movie, and I like the kills in the movie a lot. I think it's probably the best set of kills in any of the movies. I think there are some kills in other movies that are better, but I think the best kills in all, like the whole movie combined, is this movie by far, in my opinion. So, the ending of the film. The ending of the film is probably the best in any of these movies. I don't think the Final Destination franchise will ever top this ending, because secretly, the entire film is not a sequel, but rather a prequel to the original film, because here is how the movie ends. So the main good guys think they survived Death's plan. They actually end up getting on a plane to go to Paris, because that's where they are planning to go throughout the whole movie. They talk about going to Paris. As they board the plane, they watch Alex from the first movie being taken off the plane, screaming about the plane blowing up, and he starts noticing things going wrong. He gets the same premonition of the plane blowing up. It's too late, though. He can't get off. The plane blows up. The credits roll. So the film is actually a prequel, because the characters actually end up on the plane from the original film, which I think just makes this movie 10 times better, to be completely honest with you. I love the way that movie ends, and I think it is just one of the coolest ways that any movie in this franchise could have ended. I don't think there's a better way for the movie to end. I don't think there's a better ending just ever. So let's look at my rating really quick. So this is kind of where I would rate the movie. So if you're new here, hello, how are you doing? I appreciate you. I like you. 1 to 3 is bad. 3 is bad. 3 is like mid bad. 4 is mid. 5 is mid good. And then 6 and 7 are good. I would rate this movie probably a 6 out of 7. Planes blowing up. Because I genuinely enjoy this probably the most since the first Final Destination, although I do really like Final Destination 3 a lot. I think that alone as the 5th entry into the franchise is something to be thinking about and thankful for, because there's not that many film franchises out there that the 5th film is like one of the better ones. I mean, in my opinion, look at Halloween, and in my opinion, look at Friday the 13th. They're just not the best. It's been too long since I've seen the Nightmare on Elm Streets, but I can tell you they're probably better than the Texas Chainsaw 5th film. But I just think that's an incredible feat for this film. So 6 out of 7 planes blowing up at the end of the movies, because I really like this movie a lot. I think it's one of the better movies, and I don't think there's much more you can talk about this movie. I mean, the whole movie really does wind up on its head a little bit when you realize the ending. I think this movie is just the best Final Destination film other than Bloodlines, probably. There's just too much to talk about with this movie, to be honest with you. I think the human characters in this... So, for all the future people who write and make Final Destination films, I think really incorporating the human elements and focusing on writing, like, realistic human characters is really important to these movies, because there is no such thing about these movies that don't work, about not not having human characters in the way that Final Destination 3 is close. Final Destination 4 is way too far off. Even Final Destination 2 is kind of far off, but it's better. And then this movie is just knocks it out of the park. Final Destination 1, it's all about the characters. It's not as much about the death. And I feel like 2 and 3 kind of get that a little bit confused, and 2 and 4 definitely get that confused. I like this movie. It's one of the best. It's probably the best film out of the entire franchise, if I was not being subjective. I love it a lot, and I really just appreciate you guys for listening. I love talking about horror movies. I'm sorry if this was a little bit rusty. It has been a minute. I've been really stressed out with planning my wedding and stuff like that. It's been a little bit stressful here, but I got this out for you in honor of spooky season. Hopefully, I've been working on the next episode, so hopefully I'll have it out sooner than I have been. I just love this movie a lot. I love everything about this movie. I love making and writing and recording these for you guys. I just don't always have the most time. I love this very, very much. I really deeply appreciate you all for listening. How are you guys doing out there? Thanks for listening. This is the most listened to podcast that I do, which is also why I hate not getting this done and out to you guys, because the majority of you guys actually listen to this podcast, which I've always appreciated. Thank you. Shout out to all of you guys who listen to this. If you want to listen to the other podcasts, it's Diary of an Indie Filmmaker for all my horror movie writing stuff. Exploring Cinema is also just kind of more like this, but it's about other movies as well. And then the Media by Podcast is there too, which we haven't done in a bit. So hopefully you'll listen to all the other net podcasts, and if not, you're not interested in those podcasts, which I do understand, hopefully you'll listen to the next episode in this podcast. Hopefully I'll get that out soon to you guys. But if you are looking for more horror movie stuff, every video on the Media Byte channel in October is all horror movies all the time. I love horror movies. I can talk about them for hours and years and days and weeks, because it is one of my favorite genres of movie. I talk about them a lot to most people that I know. Most of my shirts are horror movies. In fact, I'm wearing a horror movie shirt and wearing horror movie pajamas. So that is what happens. So thank you for listening. And as always, as I say and have said for almost like a decade, feels like a decade, it's been like 6 or 7 years now. And we end every video on the Slashy channel, which I don't do much on it anymore. And I now say on this podcast, as a way of prevailing that classic line, treat every day like it's Halloween.
Mediabyte Podcast Network.